The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hey, Wolfpack, we're back! And right now, we're going to be doing something different today. Now that the Haunting Hour is over, I've been spreading our channel onto other horror shows and fun projects to review. One of these shows was the classic children's horror series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? As much as I'd love to review this show, like The Haunting Hour or The Nightmare Room, we've been having some copyright issues preventing some of our videos from getting posted. At least on our YouTube channel, these blocked videos can be viewed in full on our new Dailymotion account. Na. Now, Wolf and I have been discussing the future of our channel, and while we do plan to keep it going, Are You Afraid of the Dark reviews are now going to be taking a back seat. This beloved horror series is sadly not going to be a first priority show on our channel anymore. I don't want to cause any more trouble for our channel, and I'm tired of all these false copyright claims blocking our videos, even though I praise the heck out of these shows and give them free publicity. So this series is being shelved for being too much trouble. Even worse, this might meet the same fate as our reviews on the classic Twilight Zone and Goosebumps as well. Yeah, I know it sucks. The classic Twilight Zone series, Goosebumps, and Are You Afraid of the Dark get flagged, but the reboot Twilight Zone shows land completely safely without a scratch. Life's unfair. Now, the copyright complaints are not the only reason behind this small problem. They are a major thorn in my side, slowing down the increase of Are You Afraid of the Dark reviews, but I also have some personal feelings that make me reluctant to continue on with this series. I've been binge-watching all the tales people have been requesting me to do, and I've realized that maybe I'm not the right cat to demonstrate this show's awesomeness. A lot of the fan-requested episodes I checked out ranged from being okay to meh. I personally don't love this show as much as I admire The Haunting Hour or The Nightmare Room, so I am a bit biased towards some of these tales of suspense due to not growing up with them. As much as I want to discuss this show, Are You Afraid of the Dark tales are not going to be reviewed episode by episode like some of our other stuff. Now, don't worry, Are You Afraid of the Dark reviews are not dead. I will still be talking about this underrated horror series since people love it, and I grew to enjoy it too. But I will only be providing in-depth reviews for select episodes. Only some of the tales from the show are getting full-on reviews, and not the entire series. This means I will be picking a handful of episodes worthy of a review and tossing the others into reviews like this one. Sorry, fanboys and fangirls, but with the copyright fights being so not worth it and me not feeling enough for half of these sub-requests, I am choosing to go down this path. Are You Afraid of the Dark is not getting a special review for each and every episode, and just like the classic Twilight Zone and Goosebumps, it will be taking a back seat for a long while. On a plus side note, this means that The Nightmare Room, old Hub Network shows, Dead Time stories, and both Twilight Zone reboots achieved full front passes. I'm so sure that all of you out there are just so happy to hear that the 2000s Twilight Zone got pushed ahead of these classics. Yeah, expect a sudden uprise in negative reviews, but with some positive shows competing for the gold too. However, this video is not just an update on our channel issues. A lot of subs were really looking forward to me discussing this show, so this will be the closest thing you'll be getting if you want my opinion on a majority of the requests you listed. For those of you who never saw my brother Wolf's rapid-fire review on My Little Pony, these are short segments where I briefly, and I do mean briefly, talk about a multiple pile of episodes from the show which I don't have time for, or don't have enough material to talk about in a single review. These episodes are the ones people wanted me to talk about, but most likely will not be gaining their own review video. So, if you don't see any of the episodes you or someone else requested, then chances are it's probably going to gain its own review down the line. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So without further wasting your time, let's get through these short reviews on my most requested Are You Afraid of the Dark? Tales of Suspense. The Tale of Old Man Corcoran is a scary story about these two adventurous kids who just move into the spooky neighborhood and trying to befriend the local creepy street kids. The kids tell them that they love to play hide and seek in the graveyard at night and invite them over for a game, but they warn them that they fear a weird old gravedigger named Old Man Corcoran, who is a suspicious adult that hates people playing in the graveyard at night. Some scary hijinks occur, but it's completely given away that the street kids are ghosts. No, really, they drop so many hints that the street kids are not who they say they are, and tricking the main characters, that this heavy foreshadowing dropped the curtain on the epic surprise. It was subtle for a while, but they got cocky. In short, it was scary, but nothing too eventful or memorable happens. Still better than the ghostly stare. I give it a silver skull. The Tale of the Dream Girl is supposedly the most heartwarming episode of the entire series, and rumored to have been the story that inspired M. Night Shyamalan to write The Sixth Sense. And just from that description alone, it spoils the entire story for me, since I have seen The Sixth Sense, and most people are well aware of that movie's famous twist. The story is about some loser bowling alley worker falling in love with a hot girl who is revealed to be a ghost. Overall, it's a nice story, but what made me dislike it is that it gets so boring. Some mind screw scenes pop up, but sadly they go on for far too long, and amount to very little. Really, that's the biggest gripe I have with this. The fan description spoiled the twist for me, and I found myself so bored by nothing happening for long amounts of time. If you don't like horror romance stories, then this is not for you. Otherwise, it's a pretty cheesy love story that dabbles in mind screws here and there, with very little terror. Not bad, just really drawn out. I give it a silver skull. You want to see Laughing in the Dark? Then I'll give you Laughing in the Dark. Alright, we'll talk about the actual episode. The Tale of Laughing in the Dark is a well-known fan-favorite horror story that anyone who's interested in Are You Afraid of the Dark has to watch. It's about a boy named Ouija stealing a clown nose from a dead carnival clown's memorial or something, where the ghost of the dead clown soon stalks and harasses Ouija until he returns what he stole from him. We learn that the murderous clown is a troublemaker psychopath called Zeebo.
And I'm Zeebo!
And the whole plot is about Zeebo harassing Ouija until he gets satisfaction. That's about it. The kid thinks he's cool for stealing a clown nose from a statue, then the clown scares him until he gives it back. I'm most likely not going to review this one on its own, mainly because JonTron already did a thorough bashing of it, and telling my audience that a good episode is indeed a good episode would just be redundant. Overall, it's a decent story that does have its scary moments and a rad villain. I personally don't find it all that scary because I myself am not afraid of clowns. Come on, clowns just want to be funny. Why all the clown hate? It's okay, so it gets a gold skull. Just not a perfect score. The Tale of the Crimson Clown. Oh boy, another killer clown story. Oh, but it's not just a killer clown story, it's a killer clown and a killer doll story. Two overused setups for the price of one. Like I said, I myself am not terrified of clowns, so you will probably be disappointed when I say I didn't think it was all that scary. In this tale, a douchebag kid played by DW acts like a jerk, causing his older responsible brother to scare him straight by telling him the tale of the Crimson Clown, who is a murderous psychopath who punishes bad kids with death. And of course, the killer clown doll comes to life and morphs into some constantly shifting Frieza forms before moving in to assault the jerk kid. This is mainly all that happens in the tale. The bratty kid acts like a jerk, then the clown scares him. The bratty kid acts like a jerk, then the clown scares him. The bratty kid acts like a jerk, then, are you ready for this? The clown scares him. This happens over and over and over again until the brat finally begs for a second chance at life and becomes good. I do like that this episode teaches the important lesson to never be a jerk, but in all honesty, it didn't give me enough material to use for a longer review. Not to mention how I don't fear clowns, draining a lot of the fear everyone else felt for this. I think the one thing that people do fear in this episode is not the clown, but rather the clown's creepy evil laugh. Really, that was the best part in this episode. That laugh. Just imagine how creepy it would be if many other villains we loved used such a disturbing laugh. In the end, this was an okay episode, so I give it a gold skull. Oh boy, I think I found my first so bad it's good episode from Are You Afraid of the Dark? Not going to lie, this episode was terrible and really didn't hold up all that well at all. It was so bad that you almost can't help but laugh at how bad it fails. For those curious, Are You Afraid of the Dark attempts to teach kids about technology and virtual reality video games. Set during the early 90s. Scared yet? Well, it gets better. A selfish rebel bad boy who looks and acts a lot like Zach Morris and his abused nerdy sidekick Screech are asked to test out a new virtual reality video game being beta tested by the school science teacher, Weird Al Yankovic. However, as soon as Discount Zach Morris enters the VR game, he comes across, and I'm not kidding, a phantom virus who has trapped the protagonist in a video game world that looks exactly like his normal everyday life. And our hero must play the game to beat the phantom virus and win the game to escape. If he fails, then the phantom virus will somehow hack into Zach Morris's mind.
Who are you? What are you doing in my house? This isn't your house, Einstein. You're in cyberspace. Cyber what? 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 Cyberspace.
This sounds cool, but the biggest weakness of this episode is not just the dated technology and computer lingo, but rather the laughably awful villain. Really, this antagonist might be the most embarrassing villain ever to come from this show. Just watch when he chases our hero in the final level to claim his life.
Going up.
That scene alone is just one of an overly long, goofy story that just failed so hard to be scary. I tell you, if this story was meant to be a comedy, then it would get an easy 10 out of 10. But sadly, it was trying to be serial. All I have to say is, please never ask me to take a look at any Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes that discuss technology and video games, because most of them did not hold up well. If this was supposed to be a comedy, then it would have passed with flying colors. But as a serious episode, it crashes so hard. I give this episode a bronze skull. Long story short, if you want a cool phantom virus tale of suspense, then stick with Scooby-Doo. The Tale of the Final Wish is a very strange fantasy story about this little girl named Jill who is made fun of for enjoying fairy tales despite being in early middle school. But one day, she wishes that her whole life was a true fairy tale because her reality sucks. So the Sandman, played by Bobcat Goldthwait of all people, makes her wish come true. She ends up trapped in the dream world, and she has to escape from crazy old Bobcat as soon as her whimsical dream transforms into a living nightmare. I've come to believe that the only reason why people love and requested this episode was because Bobcat Goldthwait is genuinely funny. Otherwise, the rest of this episode is pretty forgettable or just really mean-spirited. I really didn't like how everyone was nasty towards this little girl for liking fairy tales so much, despite this girl being like 12 years old. It's not that big a deal, folks. Even her own family and friends are mean to her, and the fact that they suffer no karma for mocking her just pissed me off. The effects to this dream world range from cool to a bit lame. Also, I did not get the twist ending. The episode seems to lean towards an ambiguous twist on whether our hero is trapped in a dream or escaped back into reality. It's a bit hard to grasp, but in the end, this episode was only good whenever Bobcat was on screen. I give it a silver skull. Wow. Just wow. This episode was awful. The Tale of the Vampire Town was one of the many forgotten failures under Are You Afraid of the Dark's infamous seasonal rot during the revived era of the show. We follow this pretentious loser vampire kid who looks suspiciously like Neo, traveling with his uptight family to a legendary rural town known for its vampire sightings, so Neo can encounter a real vampire and finally be cool. But then the townspeople accidentally think that Neo is the resurrected vampire haunting their town. And of course, insane hijinks ensue. I'm just going to say what this episode's big problem is. The main character sucks. Vampire Kid Neo is so annoying, and the fact that we're meant to feel sympathy for him just makes this whole thing even worse. The plot is uneventful, the effects are laughable, the characters are bad, and worst of all, this episode rips off the climax from the Nosferatu episode. Yeah, no joke, the real vampire villain is defeated in the exact same way as Nosferatu from the Midnight Madness. Just skip over this one, because it was lame, ridiculous, and boring. I give it a decayed skull. The Tale of the 13th Floor was an okay episode. It had clever storytelling, but some pretty cheesy sets and effects. I really think the only reason people wanted me to talk about this episode was because the guy who played Fear from The Haunting Hour was in it as one of the supernatural characters. The main plot is about these two adventurous kids who like to play on an abandoned floor of their apartment building labeled the 13th floor, until one day the building floor is suddenly occupied by these strange people who lure the kids in to perform special tests for them, under the guise that it's all research for a toy company. Yeah, it's made painfully obvious that the strangers are really aliens in disguise, and they want to abduct the children to take them back to their home planet. Why? Well, because one of the kids is really their long-lost missing child who they want to get back. I'm sure her parents don't mind losing her. Overall, it's an okay story, but one that gives me little to nothing to work on for a whole video. Though it has a really dark ending for a lighthearted premise, so it did gain a few points. I give it a gold skull. I'm just going to come forward and say it. I hate Sardo. This episode introduces us to another one of Are You Afraid of the Dark's most popular recurring villains, Sardo, an annoying wannabe magician who is tangled with the supernatural forces and ruined many lives. A lot of people love Sardo, but I personally find him extremely annoying. But that's not important. What's his story? Well, Sardo sells some cursed X-ray goggles to a moronic trickster teenager named Weeds. Yes, seriously, and his whiny girlfriend, who uses the goggles and sees some shadow men. Okay, well, most of this plot is Weeds acting like a jerk, and his wuss of a girlfriend seeing the shadow men following her whenever she dons the super specs, before running away and having nobody believe her. Yawn, snore, I've seen it before. Also, I don't get the twist. like at all. It turns out that the Shadowman army wanted to use Sardo's magic to cross over into our dimension so they could, you guessed it, take over the world.
Of course.
It's a rather dull episode, with so many characters I found annoying. It also gets stupid when you realize that all the girl had to do was stop using the glasses. If you like it, that's fine, but in my opinion, I've seen better episodes. I give it a bronze skull. Now never ask me to review a Sardo episode ever again. Wow, holy cow, was this tale a special kind of awful. The tale of the virtual pets might just be one of the worst, if not the absolute worst episode of the entire series. There's no other way that I could put this, but Are You Afraid of the Dark does Neopets. Are You Afraid of the Dark does Neopets. Are You Afraid of the Dark does Neopets. In this episode, some stupid kids get a Neopet computer game where the villain, a video game Nintendog named Digger, absorbs the brain power of all the kids who play his game so the stupid dog can get more and more powerful before it can, you guessed it, take over the world. This is such a painfully obvious metaphor for how video games make kids dumb and acts as a pathetic attempt to reach out to the 90s kids who are playing home computer games. Much like the Renegade virus, this story is super dated beyond all belief, not to mention the painful cringe comedy. I mean, just listen to these hit zingers.
Now that's a computer crash.
The Virtual Pets is pure garbage, and it probably won't be getting its own review precisely because it was a bad episode, and I'm certain Viacom would try to block us again for warning you on its bad egg level of failure. It gets a decayed skull and the easiest 0 out of 10 ever. Don't watch it. Alright, now we finally get to a fantastic episode. The Tale of the Dollmaker might just be one of the best episodes I have ever seen since The Dead Man's Float. Like, wow, was that surprisingly good. This episode is about a little girl visiting her aunt and uncle's house out in the countryside, where it's revealed that her cousin has gone missing and has been lost for years. However, the protagonist discovers a magical dollhouse that can transport her inside of a life-size replica of the toy world, where she discovers that her missing cousin is a doll trapped inside of the dollhouse. Our hero then gets trapped in the dollhouse herself and desperately tries to save her cousin's life and escape from the evil toy world. This episode was really good. Unfortunately, it was too good. So good that I don't think I can even find enough content to discuss this tale if I were to give it its own review. I don't want to spoil this episode in particular for anyone who is curious to see it, but The Dollmaker was a great episode. In fact, I give it a gold skull and a perfect score. A must-watch tale of terror. Ah, The Tale of the Lonely Ghost. Another major fan favorite Are You Afraid of the Dark story that has received critical acclaim from the most hardcore horror fans. I thought it was meh. Yeah, in all honesty, I really didn't think this episode was all that, despite everyone around me adoring it. In this episode, a shy girl with no friends spends her summertime with her jerk idiot bully cousin who tries to scare her with a story about a haunted house, then dares her to spend the night in the haunted house where our protagonist meets a ghost girl. The ghost turns out to be a bully victim herself who was tormented into suicide by her own idiot bullies, and forms a bond with our main character, who soon tries to help her ghostly gal pal achieve inner peace and move on to the afterlife. A pretty harsh tale to give to children, but I respect its ballsiness. I really didn't feel that much for it though, like everyone else does, mainly because so much time is wasted on the protagonist's idiot bully cousin being a jerk, and it got really boring. The ghost girl was good all along, the idiot bully gets her karma, and our kid hero grows a spine. Decent, but nothing powerful. It was an okay tale, but in my opinion not the bestest ever. I give it a silver skull. This episode is about a naive shy girl moving into a haunted apartment building with her single mother. However, supernatural occurrences begin when the protagonist meets with the ghost of her dead neighbor in apartment 214. She becomes besties with an old lady ghost, and they have a friendship montage that goes on for quite some time until the one day she doesn't visit this old lady ghost, the spirit goes nuts and begins haunting her old best friend for skipping one day. Overreact much? Our hero eventually apologizes to her ghost neighbor, and then they become friends again. Overall, it was a touching episode, but the worst things I can say about it is that the episode drags on for a long time. I give it a gold skull, but just barely. The Tale of the Water Demons is a pretty standard horror episode that features the classic "don't be a jerk" moral that's in almost all the other episodes. In this tale of suspense, two brothers and a sea captain they deliver stuff to get a curse placed upon them where dead sailors rise from their watery graves to kill them for grave-robbing treasures from their sunken ships. And the sea captain and the kids desperately attempt to break the curse, try to not die, and learn to not be greedy, and blah blah blah. Of course, they succeed in the end, and they all learn a valuable lesson to not be selfish. Whoop-de-doo. I feel like the only reason people thought I'd like this episode is because the main character is played by Eddie, from Ed, Edd and Eddy. Yeah, no joke, the main character is a greedy, obnoxious jerk trying to make a quick profit and getting into trouble for it. Exactly like Eddie. Other than that cool fact, this episode gives me nothing but easy Eddie jokes, and is rather lackluster compared to this show's much cooler episodes. The Water Demons is not a bad story, but just an okay story. I give it a silver skull. Yes, the Tale of the Pinball Wizard. It was honestly the most fun episode I have ever seen from this show. I was almost about ready to give up on it at the halfway point until the supernatural stakes finally got raised. In this episode, a lazy gamer boy gets absorbed into a video game world and must play to the end and win in order to achieve his freedom. Yeah, this is the game over of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's a goofy yet fun adventure of a gamer being forced to use their gaming skills to overcome video game villains and win their freedom and self-respect. He fights dark knights, saves princesses, unlocks inventory items, combats Blues Brothers zombies. It's amazing. My only nitpick with this is that the writers seem to be confused on a few video game concepts. You know, guys, there is a difference between a pinball machine and an RPG, though for some reason they act like they're one and the same. A bit odd, but it was pretty fun. I give this a gold skull. Fun for the gamers, but not perfect. You know, I love the spooky Scarecrow plot because there are so many golden opportunities for sheer horror in these type of stories. But this might just be the most disappointing haunted Scarecrow tale I have ever seen in my life. Two kids living out in the countryside accidentally gain control over a haunted demon scarecrow, where they command it to do their chores and mundane tasks. However, when one of their family members accidentally loses the boy's baseball glove, the main character unintentionally wishes that the Scarecrow would kill whoever is responsible for losing his lucky glove, where it becomes a race to save their father from his death. I honestly thought that this was an okay episode, up until we see the Scarecrow moving. This episode does the Jaws effect to build up what the monster looks like, while the audience mostly sees the Scarecrow remaining lifeless in all of its scenes before shocking us with the villain getting physically proactive later. Then, when we actually see the monster moving, it looks pretty terrible. This episode is a dull experience with a laughably dopey-looking villain. The monster just loses so much fear power the minute he waltzes on screen and waddles as slow as a turtle. If you want a great Scarecrow episode, then stick with the R.L. Stine versions. I give this one a bronze skull. The Tale of the Midnight Ride is Are You Afraid of the Dark's attempt to offer kids a modernized version of the Headless Horseman. And it was pretty bad. We follow this social outcast loser named Ian, who's trying to win the heart of the hot popular girl, but a generic idiot bully dares him to travel down Ichabod Crane's path through Sleepy Hollow to prove if he's really brave or not. Where, of course, the Headless Horseman turns out to be real after all, and comes after our kid hero's soul. Problem number 1. The sets in this episode look really fake. Seriously, I know Are You Afraid of the Dark is not well known for its spectacular special effects, but the sets in this episode look like a stage play, not a setting from a hit TV series. Problem number 2. The computer-generated effects were even worse. One of the worst scenes in this episode is when the kids defeat the Headless Horseman. How do they defeat this horrific undead demon who even Johnny Depp struggled against? They cause him to explode. Yeah, the Headless Horseman dies in a painfully bad CGI explosion. It's actually pretty hilarious. Other than those problems, it is a bore. I really thought this was going to be a cool adaptation of the Headless Horseman legend, but it was just forgettable and laughably lame. I give it a bronze skull. The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter was just a meh episode. In this tale, a supernatural babysitter tries to teach a bratty fat kid the importance of books by sending him into a fairy tale world where all the monsters are trying to kill him. Perfect way to take care of someone else's kids, lady. So in short, the kid fights back against many supernatural monsters and learns the value of reading books. Nothing is really all that scary about it, except for this guy. This thing should have been an R-rated horror villain. I don't think it's awful, but I was really disinterested in most of this episode, and found nothing of real value worth talking about in it. I give it a silver skull. It's got good intentions, but it was just boring.
Books are fun.
Oh boy, this episode was just plain bad. In the tale of the nightly neighbors, two suspicious paranoid children obsess over their mysterious new neighbors who recently moved in overnight. These new neighbors come from Europe, dress in all black, and only come out at night. Meanwhile, everyone in the neighborhood comes down with a bizarre virus, making them feel woozy, as if the blood in their body has slowly drained from them. All of them feel this way, except for the new neighbors. And as you can guess, the imaginative kids believe that their new neighbors are vampires, and desperately try to save their town. Most of the story spends so much time with the kids, our heroes, breaking and entering into their neighbor's house and trying to find proof that the new family are creatures of the night. What just heroes? This episode drags this mystery out so far that it just gets really boring and repetitive fast. The twist ending we build up to is also incredibly stupid and super cheesy, to the point where I just didn't care anymore. The Nightly Neighbors is a lame, slow, boring tale of suspense that shows too much of the silliness of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was so ridiculous that I just gave up on it halfway in. I give it a decayed skull. Stick with Grampires instead. I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I hated this episode. I know this one is a huge fan favorite story, but I really didn't like it. This is one of the few Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes that I hate but everyone else loves. In this episode, a stupid little girl summons a Quicksilver Demon in her bedroom, who proceeds to kill her and trap her soul in her house forever. Why did she do such a moronic action? Well, get this. This magical little girl summoned a demon from hell into the living world so she could kill it. Let me repeat that. She released a demon trapped in hell into our world so she could kill it. Wow, off to a great start. Where would a demon go after it dies? Into super hell? Plus, she didn't even know how to stop it. A horrific conflict brought about by a total idiot. Suddenly, two new kids move into the house years later and are immediately haunted by the Quicksilver Demon and the girl who tragically died in their house. Guess what the Quicksilver Demon does to scare the kids? No, really, guess. The demon moves the furniture around. And instantly, all coolness this monster could have had goes down the toilet. No joke, all this monster does is troll the kids and mess with their random objects. Eventually, the two brothers team up with the twin sister of the girl who died in their house to vanquish the demon once and for all. And it's not really all that cool as it sounds out loud. To me, this episode is the Sans of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It spends so much time chasing all the horror movie cliches we've seen before and waits until the last minute to deliver something that could have actually been cool. I was so bored to death by this episode because so much of the screen time is wasted on the ghost being a nuisance to the children before it actually does something threatening, and there is a painful amount of padding stretched out all over the place. The kids and their troubled lives were very uninteresting, and the demon, which looks like a poor man's Emperor Palpatine, was just wasted doing every horror cliche we've seen in the last decade on much better horror stories. I give it a decayed skull. It was just so dull. Well, I spent so much time crapping all over some fan favorite requests, so let's end this video on a high note. The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle is by far the best episode I have ever seen from this series. Really, this tale is perfect. We follow an emotionally broken teenager who witnessed the death of his best friend a long time ago during his childhood, where his dude bro died horribly drowning under the town bridge. A few years later, our hero is soon plagued by visions of his dead best friend and struggles with grasping whether or not he's hallucinating his dead pal or if it's really a ghost haunting him. However, the ghostly visions warn our traumatized hero that history is going to repeat itself, and his little brother is endangered of dying under the town bridge like he did. So it turns into a race against time, where our hero must prevent another tragedy before it's too late. What follows is perhaps the most emotionally gripping, tragic story I have ever seen. This tale of suspense is like the toy train and Grandpa's glasses of Are You Afraid of the Dark? It is that good. Are You Afraid of the Dark actually manages to give a good, emotional horror story that feels real and feels intense. If I was able to give episode-by-episode reviews on this show, this story would be the most praised out of all other Are You Afraid of the Dark tales I have seen from this show. I probably won't do a review on it, mainly because I fear I would show you almost all of the good emotional moments in it, which would probably be flagged for showing you too much. Sucks, but I don't think I can even put this tale's strengths into words to describe how great it is. I give this episode a gold skull and a perfect score. It was that sweet. And those were my rapid-fire reviews on the major fan-requested episodes I have for Are You Afraid of the Dark? Some might notice that I didn't address a large number of the tales given to me, but let's just say that those will hopefully be gaining their own reviews sometime in the future. Not all of them, sadly, but a decent handful will. There will possibly be more rapid-fire reviews as well if our channel faces more issues like this, but we'll take things nice and easy as we carry on towards the future. Wolf Entertainment is never going to end its hunt for great and awful features. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society over. For now.